and welcome to Local Loudon Podcast. Today, we turn our attention to the ongoing fight for women's reproductive rights in Virginia. This topic, deeply intertwined with health, dignity, and equality, is a fundamental aspect of every woman's life. However, the path to reproductive freedom in Virginia is fraught with challenges. Even as we celebrate victories such as the passage of the Contraceptive Equality Act and the Protect Virginia Health Workers Board of Medicine bill, what has happened to the Reproductive Freedom Amendment? We will hear from Virginia State Senator Jennifer Boysko, the chief patron of the Reproductive Freedom Resolution. Senator Boysko represents the Virginia's 38th District. Previously, she represented the 86th District of the Virginia House of Delegates, which is or was located in Fairfax and Loudoun County. I'm not sure how that worked with the redistricting. We also will hear from Jamie Lockhart, who leads Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia. As the executive director, she's dedicated to preserving and broadening reproductive health care access through a multifaceted approach, including legislation, education, electoral activity, and litigation. So, whether you are well versed in this topic or you're just here to learn, we invite you to join us on this episode of Local Loudon. Let's dive in. My name is Joanne.
And I'm Anna.
And this is Local Loudon. So, Anna, do you want to take on the first question?
Well, first of all, welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Senator Boysko, would you mind explaining to us what the status quo is right now for laws related to reproductive freedoms?
In Virginia, yeah, I'd be
Yes.
delighted. I would be delighted to. Right now in Virginia, abortion is legal in the first and the second trimesters. Early pregnancy abortions can be made through mail and get the mail order abortion pills in conjunction with a virtual telehealth appointment. And we were able to, through the Reproductive Health and Protection Act, be able to remove some of those obstructions that are not necessary, like the 24-hour delay, biased counseling, and mandatory ultrasound. But those things could be restated. Also, as a result of the Reproductive Health Protection Act, patients can also seek abortion care from a certified nurse practitioner or certified nurse midwife. And these individuals and professionals go through rigorous postgraduate training and have extensive clinical experience. And this has greatly expanded our access in Virginia. You may know that we are the only state in the South, all the way to New Mexico, with reasonable abortion care laws on the books, but we're always at risk with whoever is in the Virginia General Assembly. It depends on who our elected officials are, whether or not we continue to have a good policy or whether we roll it back and go back to those horrible extreme abortion bans. So that's one of the reasons that I have been pushing for a state constitutional amendment, so that we can just make sure that we can guarantee that for individuals as they move into the future.
To follow up on what Anna said, as I understand it, our laws are equal to what Roe v. Wade was when it wasn't overturned.
They're actually more expansive. They give doctors more flexibility than Roe v. Wade. And I'm sure that Jamie can go into the details, but we have the ability for doctors to make decisions in emergency situations with consultation with other doctors, so that we don't experience some of the things that we're seeing around the country. So actually, our abortion care bill laws have been in place before Roe v. Wade.
So I'm guessing that was passed when Roe v. Wade passed, and people before us actually felt it was important to put it in our laws in Virginia, because I'm thinking of Arizona and that 1896 law that is taking effect. And I was thinking, wow, we had the forethought to make sure we had it in Virginia as well.
And Joanne, if I could jump in for a moment here, and also somewhat good news. Arizona, actually, their state senate today actually voted to overturn that 1864 ban, but it takes 90 days to get enacted, and so they still will have their extreme total abortion ban take effect for some amount of time this fall. But looking at Virginia's abortion laws, I will say we tend not to want to talk about Roe as the standard that we're upholding, because under Roe v. Wade, as a federal constitutional right to abortion, we saw states put in place all sorts of restrictions on abortion care, including here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. When Roe v. Wade was still the law of the land, we had targeted restrictions on abortion providers. We had a 24-hour mandatory delay. We had a physician-only provision so that qualified nurse practitioners couldn't provide care. We saw under Roe v. Wade that the Supreme Court allowed all sorts of abortion bans to take effect across the country, not complete abortion bans, but they allowed SB 8 in Texas, a 6-week abortion ban, to take effect. And so while abortion being legal in the first and second trimester is that original Roe framework, we saw in the decades following 1973, but particular in the early 2000s, early 2010s, the access to abortion was dismantled across the country. And so Roe was always the floor. It is not the ceiling. And we want to make sure that with this constitutional amendment that we started to discuss, that it's going to protect abortion rights. And we're not going to have those restrictions that make abortion really inaccessible.
So the 2010s, you're talking about when they're required to get a sonogram before deciding, and that kind of.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Medically unnecessary restrictions that from anti-abortion legislators, where they knew that they couldn't completely ban abortion, so they put in all these obstacles so that people seeking abortion care had to go through a full range of obstacle course to be able to actually access that care.
Including the hospital style facilities and all that.
Correct.
Yeah.
The width of the corridors, all kinds. Parking spaces were involved.
The width of the corridors?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning to Joanne earlier that my understanding is most abortions, elective abortions, are by medication now. They're not invasive. So why you would need a wide corridor for that?
Well, do you need a prescription for those pills? Out of curiosity?
You do.
You do?
You do. You need, well, I will say, if you're having if you're having a medication abortion through the healthcare system in the United States, then yes, you need a prescription. There are individuals who are ordering abortion pills by mail through different online pharmacies, sadly, because they don't have a lot of choice of living in states where abortion has been banned, and they're choosing to then self-manage their abortions because otherwise they have to travel hundreds of miles out of state to get access to care.
Which brings up, are we seeing an uptick of people coming, because we're bordering many states?
What kind of transit are we getting? Yes.
Yeah. Do either of you know, Jamie, I guess since you work with Planned Parenthood, do you know if we've had an uptick of people coming across the border?
Yes, and I'll say
it sounds like we're in another country. Sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, no, it's true. I mean, people are being forced to be refugees to access the essential health care that they need. So today, when we're recording, is May 1st, and as of today, Florida now has a 6-week abortion ban in effect. Florida provided about 84,000 abortions last year. Florida is in providing that many abortions was second only to the state of California, 1 out of 12 people who sought abortions in the US in the last year sought abortions in Florida. And so this abortion ban taking effect today in Florida is just devastating. It's going to be devastating for abortion access across the South. I will say the numbers that I have are from the Virginia League for Planned Parenthood, which sees patients in Richmond and Hampton Roads. And in 2022, approximately 3% of Virginia League for Planned Parenthood's abortion patients were from out of state, just 3%. As of April, over 20% of their patients were
Wow.
traveling from out of state each month to seek abortion. And just yesterday, more than 30% of folks making abortion appointments were from out of state. And so we're going to be tracking that closely, but we know that Florida has been such a stopgap for abortion access across the South. And now that Floridians, but also people all across the South who are traveling to Florida to access care, is going to have a tremendous impact on the number of people who need to come to Virginia. And I think one of the things just to mention about Virginia, and we talked about the Reproductive Health Protection Act, getting rid of all those medically unnecessary barriers, is that Virginia does not have a waiting period now. Someone can make an appointment, they can get in for their appointment the same week at this point, and then be able to go home and go back to their life. And for a lot of people, taking care of their kids, because the majority of people who have abortions already have kids at home. And North Carolina, which has a 12-week abortion ban, has a 72-hour waiting period. So if somebody wants to travel to get an abortion in North Carolina, they have to go, and then they have to come back at least 3 days later, after they've signed a bunch of paperwork and seen and heard a state mandated script. And so we know that's why Virginia is so critical, because so many people across the South, it's not practical to go to have a doctor's appointment and then have to go home or stay overnight, 3 nights, to then access healthcare.
Yeah, and you think about it, Hampton Roads and Richmond are not close to these states, so they had to drive a couple of hours to get to them.
And in some
Um,
places
Yeah, and
more.
I'll just note too that from what I've heard from providers, a lot of people are driving to their appointments. I think those of us that are more used to travel and also have privilege to fly places would assume more people would fly, but no, more people are driving to access care. And so that does make it so that people are looking at where they can go that are off highways, and that they are spending hours and hours in cars.
Yeah, and then this affects, people disproportionately are brown and black patients who perhaps don't have the resources to they have to make big decisions whether or not they're going to be able to get to a doctor, and it's really a hardship on so many folks who are in the South. I'm from Alabama and Arkansas, and when I talk to my mom about what's going on down there, it's horrifying. We cannot let that happen here in Virginia. We are not going to allow ourselves to go backwards.
So, Senator Boysko, you introduced SJ1, the Senate Joint Resolution for the Women's Reproductive Freedom. I don't think he's called it women's. I think it was just reproductive freedom, which I thought was interesting. But but it got pushed to 2025. Do you want to explain why it was pushed? Because when I saw that, I was like, no, we got to wait another year.
I know. We heard from a lot of people. One thing we wanted to make certain that everybody knew that it was a priority right after the election, to say, like, we are committed to this, we will be doing it. Typically and historically, constitutional amendments are made in the year just prior to an election, on the first year. We're different than the rest of the country. So our constitutional amendments, you have to have them go before the General Assembly twice in 2 different years, with an election in between the 2 elections. The governor has no role in this at all, which is a good thing. So as long as we have the majority, we can get this done next year, hold the majority in 2025, and then pass it again in 2026. And then it would go to the public for vote the following fall. But Virginia is a little bit different than other than other states around the country. And you know, this is an issue that most every Democrat in the state ran on and pledged that they are going to be, supporting. And we look forward to continuing to working with them to make sure that we've got the language perfect, so that it's ready to go this
That's
next
what
year.
I heard. They want the language perfect so that it cannot be attacked in the courts, brought up in the courts, and then disallowed.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought it was written just like, the Roe v. Wade. I recognize it wasn't legislation, but I thought it was. I thought it would be, but I get why they put it off. Because of the language has to be perfect. But
yeah.
it's
It's just essential that it's got to be solid and really tight. We've seen in some other states where there have been, lawsuits really challenging what the states have done on their constitutional amendments. And so we want to make sure it's rock solid and have the best language possible so that it will stand muster to our more conservative Supreme Court if it happens to get there, or one of the federal courts. And so that's been one reason we didn't want to just rush it through, but we did want to communicate to all of our voters that this is the highest priority for so many people.
So,
And one of the benefits of the fact that it has to be the exact same language between when it passes in the General Assembly and when it gets voted on is you can't have somebody rearrange the words and confuse people.
Yeah, you can't change a comma or a period at the end of a sentence. It has to be exactly the same. So it'll go up in 2024. We will have an election the following year. It'll go up again after that election, and then it would go towards the public for a referendum. And we know that this is something that is a high priority for all people who live in Virginia. And I expect that we will be able to enshrine it in our Constitution by the fall of 2026.
Okay, so it's gonna come to 2025 again, and then 2026 it has to pass again, and then 2026 in the election the people need to vote on it. Is that correct?
So I might be getting my years wrong. 2025 will be next year's session, so it would go up there. Then there would be the fall election, and then in 2026 it would be in front of the General Assembly that winter again, because we meet in January and February, and then by that fall it would go before the voters in that fall of 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
November 3rd, 2026. Mark your calendar.
Yeah. Jamie's got the exact date of the election. So yeah, we are working hard on it. We're going to be working with a coalition over the summer to make sure that we are really honing in the language so that it's perfect, to have it ready to go immediately as soon as the General Assembly starts next year.
Can either of you address, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead, Anna.
Can either of you address what kind of opposition you're seeing?
I was thinking the same thing, so there you go.
Well, I'm
happy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just happy to address that. So every time that there's an abortion ban introduced in Virginia, we see the kind of same people standing up in support of it and in opposition to our reproductive freedom. Groups like the Family Foundation, I guess I should say the so-called Family Foundation, because I don't know how you can name yourself that and be so opposed to people's reproductive rights, but also opposed to LGBTQ plus families and couples, and wanting to ban books and all of their values I find very questionable. We also see opposition from, there's a group called Virginia Society for Human Life, which is kind of the anti-abortion organization in Virginia, and then also the Catholic Conference usually is in opposition to the legislation that we're promoting as well. And we know that these folks are a vocal minority. We know that they represent less than 30. Really, they're representing like 8% of Virginians who want to see abortion completely banned. And I think they know that as well. But and as a result, they push a lot of misinformation about what the bills that we're advocating for, what a constitutional amendment will do. I think I saw them say something about like, if this passes, dentists will be able to perform abortions. And I'm like, nobody's advocating for dentists to provide abortion care. We want, qualified professionals, qualified nurse practitioners and qualified doctors, and really just pushing all sorts of just so ridiculous misinformation because they know that Virginians disagree with them and that Virginians want to protect reproductive freedom.
Yeah, and I think let's just remember that Governor Glenn Youngkin spent his entire year pushing a 15-week ban, thinking that he could claim that if he, took a number out of the sky and pushed that was somehow going to be acceptable to the voters of Virginia. But what we need to remember is when someone, a Republican, is trying to take away your freedom or my freedom to decide when we're going to start a family, with whom, and at what time in our lives, that is not acceptable. We need to assure that we are giving families the decision-making power about these most personal and private decisions. And we will not be letting the governor or any Republicans take it backwards for us. We deserve to have the reproductive freedom, including abortion care, but also, contraception. But, if a person has miscarriage, or if, you have a really high risk pregnancy, these are the kinds of things that we want doctors and medical professionals in tandem with the individual who is pregnant to be able to make the decisions that are most critical at the time when it happens, not at some arbitrary date that a politician pulled down, but that makes sense medically and for the individuals who are dealing with this personally.
Right. Even ectopic pregnancies and things where it's really not an elective procedure.
Right. I mean, haven't we seen around the country these horror stories of, they have a patient on the table, she's about to die, and they're thinking, well, are we going to be sued, or do we need to wait a little bit longer before we treat her, because they're worried for their own sake. Like this is not the way we should be, doing our healthcare in our country. And I think that independents, reasonable Republicans, and Democrats all over the country are just saying, absolutely, hands off my body, hands off my decision. You do not have the freedom to make these, you're not going to take the freedom away from me when I need to make these decisions for myself and my family. And again, as Jamie said, many of these people are folks who already have children who are really, really, making decisions that are best for them, not, in consultation with their medical provider. And we need to be able to trust that they know what they're doing and that this is best for them and their families.
And that's why when I learned about that Protect the Healthcare bill, I really appreciated that they passed that, because we forget that they're being attacked when they are just trying to provide the best care possible. So it never dawned on me that that should become law, and yet here we are.
Yeah. And so when we do finally get the amendment, it will make sure that Virginia and our local governments cannot treat abortion care or other reproductive health care any differently than they do, any other kind of health care, and making certain that they are able to make those very important decisions for themselves without political interference from folks who have no idea what this type of healthcare even is. I mean, if you talk to some of them, they just sound completely crazy. I remember that couple of years ago when the congressman was saying, "Oh, if a woman is raped, her body knows how to shut it down," right? Like, it just horrifies me to think that person has some ability to make a decision about people in America.
Yeah, I don't know where he got that idea from. Who
I,
told
you
him that?
know, it wasn't based in fact. Let's have the
No.
doctors and the medical professionals make those
Yeah.
decisions.
I think there's
I,
something about certain kinds of ducks have a corkscrew device that can prevent, but I do, humans, that's not an issue.
Golly.
I'm happy with this.
Ah,
Yeah,
I'm
there's
sorry, I
a
have a dark sense of humor.
that's okay. You got to laugh, right? Or else we'll all be crying.
yes. But that's another thing we have seen in past years is misinformation. Not only, I remember ERA coming out and they said women will walk around naked. And they also said with the ERA that will allow abortions. Now, granted, you know that it was being put out by politicians in Loudoun County at the time. He's not here anymore, but I think it was LaRock. But the how does one handle misinformation? How do you tell the truth? Have we learned anything to help people come to the truth? I guess.
Well, I think having the facts and data-driven analysis, right? Like having folks like Jamie with Planned Parenthood who have the facts and the figures and understand exactly the details that are necessary to help truth tell, really helpful. We work hand in hand together in Virginia on these issues, and so we do have up-to-date information that we can provide our colleagues. We have doctors who come and speak with us. We have nurse practitioners and certified midwives who come and talk, and we have individuals from the public who come and testify.
Those politicians miss that talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I have often said back in the day, my husband and I sometimes argue when we spout something. I was like, oh, I heard this. And like, oh yeah, show me this proof. And he's like, I want it. And he will go into, I want 3 sources. But I think you gotta, no offense, Senator Boysko, you gotta question your politicians. You gotta say, where'd you get that information from? And they should be able to provide. And that's where I would go with that too. And that's why we have Jamie here, so she can give us the facts and the statistics and the numbers. I'm always a big believer in how one can help. I know voting, yes, go out and vote. But I also, if you have tips or advice on how one can get involved, what they can do to help this along, to secure it on its path, because it still has a couple of years left.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. So, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia, we're currently in the process of forming a number of local community action councils where folks can get involved talking to their friends and neighbors and others about the importance of having the reproductive freedom constitutional amendment and the process, because we know it's a long, kind of confusing process where people are seeing on the news how other states are just, getting a bunch of signatures and having these ballot initiatives then immediately on their ballot. And we have a number of community organizers across the Commonwealth who are putting together local events and going out to farmers markets. They're going to be at a bunch of pride festivals in June, and talking to supporters about pledging their support and making sure that they're talking to their legislators about the need to get this constitutional amendment passed. So we have a fantastic Northern Virginia community organizer, Rhea Simon. And if folks are interested in getting in touch with her, they can email her at rsimon@ppav.org, as in Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia. And I asked her what we have coming up in Loudoun, and she said that we'll be at Loudoun Pride, and that also she is working with Freedom Virginia on a arts and crafts event in Leesburg in June as well. And so I think there's going to be not only some really important community building events to talk about the constitutional amendment, but also some fun events to get supporters together in community.
Yeah. And I think it's really important also that individuals who are passionate about this issue are having regular conversations with their not only with the stakeholders like Planned Parenthood, but also with their elected officials to make sure that they understand all the facts and have the information at hand as well, because this is not something that everybody is up to speed on, and so education is a big part of this.
Yeah, I think also talking with friends. I think we need to get out more. As a committed introvert, COVID was great for me. I loved it. But I also have learned since getting out and talking to people, I've changed a couple of minds, not so much about reproductive rights, about other things. Talking makes people sane.
It really does. I'll tell you, when I had very young children back in about, I think it was like 2000, right when they started talking about trap laws as being a possibility, I got engaged with the pro-choice community, and I invited my neighbors to come in and have just, coffee and cookies and discussed the legislation. And we had never, my neighbors and I had no idea how they were going to react to me. But it ended up, some of them told me some really personal stories, and they wanted to get engaged as well. I started lobbying the General Assembly. That was the first time I went up to actually talk to my legislator. And it was what got me engaged in Virginia politics, almost 25 years ago. So
Wow.
It can change lives to help people understand that their voices can matter. And I think that most people don't realize, we're all busy getting our kids dressed and going to work and putting food on the table, but to understand that it doesn't really take that much interaction with your legislator to actually get their attention and help them understand that something's really important. And we can help them learn how to do that too. And I know that Jamie and Planned Parenthood will also, they're experts at this as well.
Along those lines, even if your representative supports it, it's always a good idea to remind them, thank you for supporting it, so they know everyone hears them. So yes, I think that's also a big idea to remind them. Yes, keep it up. We want this.
It is always nice to get positive feedback, because everybody gets a lot of negative feedback in this job. So when somebody is saying, we appreciate you, that goes a long way too.
Oh, good to hear.
Well, yes, I will tell you, we appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate thank you.
Putting up the SJ1 and keep fighting the fight. So I guess coming up, I know Senator Boysko is running for Jennifer Wexton's seat, and will be in the, I guess, primaries open, Friday. Early voting starts Friday.
That's right, yeah. So I'll just say, so I served in the House of Delegates, elected in 2015, which had a part of Loudoun in it. But then in 2018, when Jennifer Wexton went to Congress, I took her Senate seat and have served as her representative and as her senator, and about 200,000 people in Loudoun over the past 5 years. It was just this January that this is the first year in history that we have redistricted and did not let legislators have any part in their new districts. Right. And so they have changed my district. So I used to be representing about half the population of Loudoun County over the past 5 years. And I carried not only the constitutional amendment this year, but also worked with now Congressman Jennifer McClellan to carry the constitutional amendment last year. And when Jennifer Wexton was in the Senate, she and I carried the reproductive health care bills. I carried them in the House, and she carried the exact same one in the Senate. So I've been doing this for a really long time, and really care about this community, and think that my priorities are very much in line with what Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton's priorities are. And we've worked really closely together over the years.
Thank you. And Jennifer Wexton will be, will be at the primary forum on May 23rd through the League of Women Voters Loudoun. But yes, early voting starts Friday. And then Jamie, you said a lot of things that are happening in Loudoun County. I didn't realize this. Planned Parenthood is not in Loudoun. When I was looking into it, I saw our closest one is actually in Maryland. But I was happy to hear you say that many of the activities that they're doing is going to be here in Loudoun, like Loudoun Pride and the Freedom. Oh, did you lose?
Sorry about that. I think my headphones just lost for a second.
Oh, okay.
But I can speak a little bit to Planned Parenthood's presence in Virginia, which is that there are 6 Planned Parenthood health centers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And you're correct that there's not currently a Planned Parenthood in Northern Virginia, but we're hopeful that there will be one sometime in the near future. There was one before, and then we had all those restrictions, and the Planned Parenthood left, but hopeful that they will be coming back. But there is Planned Parenthood of Metropolitan Washington, D.C. that has a Planned Parenthood Health Center in D.C. and then a couple in the suburbs of Maryland, right there on the border of D.C. And we work closely with them, but also with other providers that are providing care, independent abortion providers and other OBGYNs providing care across the Commonwealth.
And Anna wanted me to make sure I said, I don't know if you know what I'm going to ask, that Planned Parenthood is not just about abortions. They do other things. Contraceptives is one, LGBTQ rights. There's other healthcare that you work with, because you always hear Planned Parenthood and abortion in the news, but you forget that they do a lot more than just that.
Yes, I will say that the most common service that Planned Parenthood provides is STI testing. But Planned Parenthoods now provide primary care. They provide behavioral health care. Planned Parenthood in Virginia is the largest provider of trans health care, gender affirming health care. And so really, Planned Parenthood is a very important safety net healthcare provider, providing a range of sexual and reproductive health care, but beyond that now. And one of the programs that I know that Planned Parenthood is very proud to participate in is the Contraceptive Access Initiative, which provides free birth control to qualifying low-income Virginians. And so there's lots of Virginians who are getting LARCs, long-acting reversible contraception, like IUDs, and also other forms of contraception through Planned Parenthood. And that's an important program that the Virginia General Assembly established under Governor Ralph Northam, and that continues today.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. That's all we have for tonight. And I am glad to see that we are still moving forward on the women's reproductive rights. Anna, did you have anything you want to add?
The only thing I was thinking is that this can be a bipartisan issue or a nonpartisan issue. I remember Barbara Comstock was trying to get contraceptives to be over the counter. And so, reproductive health care is important to a variety of people and not just one side.
You are so right. And I mean, that's so well said. I was able to get a bill that allowed us to get a full year's worth of contraception, like birth control pills, at one time, and that passed with strong bipartisan support. The LARC program that Jamie was just talking about, which provide IUDs for individuals, is also something that has gotten bipartisan support. We all, having family planning and making some decisions for yourselves about the timing and when and with whom you want to have a family, that's something that I think most Virginians do care about. And as a mom of two daughters, and as a somebody who has experienced a very high risk pregnancy and was told that I should not have another one, these things are really important to people who might not think that they would be interested in it until it hits them personally. And so I agree with you. It is not, this is something that Republicans and Democrats and independents they all struggle with some of these issues and are appreciative that they have the right and the freedom to make decisions for themselves. And again, we are the only state in the south of the United States, all the way to New Mexico, who still has reasonable abortion rights in place. And it's just incumbent upon all of us to preserve it. And I'm so thankful that you all are bringing that to our attention and to the public's attention tonight, because this is something I know that most families have an interest in. So thank you. Thanks for having us tonight too.
And thank you for representing us.
It's my honor.
I feel it's a service, being a politician. I didn't realize how difficult it was to be a politician until recently, we'll say. But thank you, Senator Boysko. Thank you, Jamie Lockhart. And this is Local Outed.